Welcome, everyone. I'd like to open the meeting for the comprehensive plan update. Would you please stand to the pledge, please?
I'm sorry to interrupt, Chairman Parker. Just a reminder, if everyone could pull their mics up nice and close, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Sorry, I got a little tongue-tied there. Reflect the members that are present here this evening. To the minutes for June the 24th, 2025 of the comp plan. Everybody should have a copy. Anybody have any comments or anything they want to add or talk about?
Yeah.
First thing on the agenda is review the key personnel interviews. Here, let me just start out. I'm disappointed we only have 5 out of 15. Comments or issues? Craig or Emily, you want to?
Chairman, you're cutting out a lot with the dialogue.
We're talking about the key personnel.
Okay.
Anyone have any comments about the 5 that was responded? Emily, who made the contact, was it you?
Yes.
Am I coming through clear now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we sent out a couple emails and unfortunately only got 5 responses. We did get a lot of great information from these interviews, but not as many people as we hoped had responded to our requests.
Say, did we have anybody to represent like the residents as opposed to these individual sections, or?
I think our goal was to keep personnel of businesses
Yeah.
in town. The residents was when we sent out the survey and had the different stands set up for surveys. That covered all the residents at an earlier stage.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken,
But we
we
did have the HOA organizations on the list and reached out to them, but they didn't, we didn't get responses as far as that goes. So that would be, the resident
Yeah,
element,
yeah.
I guess.
So many of those HOAs are barely existing.
So out of the 5, is there any particular one or item that stands out that we really need to talk about, other than the quality of life and possibly changing zonings?
So if you'd like, I could run through the general suggestions that each person made. The last question I asked each person was, if I could bring one thing to the comprehensive plan meetings, what would you say? So I can run through those elements and we can talk about if they're already included in the plan or where we might want to include them in the plan.
Okay.
Sounds good to me.
Yes?
Okay. So the first one that I have here is I spoke with Chief Baker and Major Mitchell from the police department. So some of their suggestions, the first was that the city conduct a citywide salary study to identify where salaries are competitive and where changes might need to be made. So this is not something that we already have in the plan. It could potentially be added as an implementation step to one of the goals, maybe under our public safety goal of ensure fire, police, and emergency services keep pace with population growth.
See,
I don't-
it seems like that's more of a council thing than a comprehensive plan thing,
I
but,
agree with you, Harry.
Yeah, I don't know how that would affect.
yeah,
ci-
it seems a little extra specific for a comprehensive plan thing.
Seems like most of his ideas, or not only his, but the rest of them, was more dealing with their specific instance.
Which isn't uncommon, right? They're gonna represent, the area that they're kind of most familiar with. So I don't think any of these responses were a surprise. But I will say in general, I think they kind of echoed a lot of what we got from the public survey as well. So I think that's my key takeaway from these interviews.
And I think it was important that he did notice that in the past couple of years, we doubled
Yes.
the amount of staff they had, what, from 8 to 16 or something like that.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
I don't know how that matches the percentage of how many officers per capital.
I think we had that. Didn't we talk about
I was
that?
gonna say, technically, if I remember right,
16.
we may still actually be one down.
At the ratio of how many residents, I think it's supposed to be 16, Jim, or
Yeah, because it's
we're
it's
actually
two
a
per
couple
thousand.
hundred people over. It's supposed to be 2 officers per 1,000.
We're at like
now
8,400.
The current code says considering assistance from allied agencies and
Okay.
things like that. So we're at like 8,200 people, 16 officers, but there's also been discussion of whether, every officer should be counted, or whether the chief and the major, like the administrative officers, whether that 2 per 1,000 really should be patrol officers, which would, if that were the case, we'd be a couple officers behind. So.
Well, if they carry a weapon and have a badge, they ought to be
And
counted.
actually, there was, the code was modified recently, so the chief has more discretion in terms of, the idea is once we get to a critical mass where we can have 24/7 coverage without a lot of overtime, that we may not need to stick to that rigid 2 per 1,000. Once we get to a certain level that, we have coverage, it may, at that point, we might not need to hire an officer for every 500 people.
okay. All right.
All right, anything else?
Yes, the other 2 comments he had were assessing downtown zoning and housing strategies for improved safety and commercial appeal. We do kind of already have this under the safe, inclusive, and connected neighborhoods goal, which is under public safety and addressing affordable housing needs while maintaining neighborhood stability from the housing plan. And his last comment was a desire for a clear funding strategy for city facilities, which is already addressed for the most part under expand and modernize public facilities, utilities, and services to meet future needs, which is in the community facilities goal. So
Some of
most,
that would fall under the facility, adequate facility guidelines, wouldn't it?
yes,
Yeah,
The officer ratio is, but, yeah. Funding strategy isn't within that particular ordinance.
Okay. All right,
okay. The
If-
next
okay,
one, if we're ready to move on. The next one was the Chamber of Commerce. I spoke with Rocky Herring, and some of his suggestions were improve traffic light timing or other regulation alterations to improve traffic rather than the bypass, or as a medium-term solution until the bypass is built. This could go under any number of the transportation goals.
I noticed one of his comments that he mentioned that the residents are more price conscious.
Yes.
So I don't know how that would really affect comp plan,
Well,
other
I
than
was
based
gonna
on.
say, yeah, a lot of this stuff really didn't have a ton with the comp plan, but yeah, I mean, I had some of these, the questions, like, we'll move down to the next one, this facilitate downtown festivals and events. Where?
Where do we have space downtown? Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
I
that's
think we
okay.
had some in the front parking lot of the police station at one point, but, I mean, to me, the biggest problem on that whole front is there's not a lot of draw for the residents right now. I mean, walk up and down Main Street right this moment. What's open when everybody's home?
Well, either someone in here mentioned, one of those five mentioned that downtown is more open to outsiders coming through town than the residents in town. Meaning that, I guess we know what's downtown, so we don't go downtown compared to
Well, but
people,
but
visitors
I'm
coming
just-
in.
I'd have to ask, like, what, like, again, what, like, if I get home, like, I just got home half an hour ago or whatever, what have I got aside from, like, Laughing Coffin? I'm not sure if Stonehouse is open right now or not.
Comment was in that first one. The most foot traffic downtown is by rather than the Taneytown.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's where I thought I read it
But I mean,
somewhere.
that's we're veering off into the weeds a little bit, but yeah, some of this stuff is covered under some of the other things that have been talked about of trying to revitalize the downtown area.
We kind of addressed that now that we hired somebody that's going to
Yes.
change all that, you know.
So where we can piece that into the comp plan, guys, to make sure it gets in there somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pervasive.
As one of our
throughout.
goals and we accomplished.
That actually, that's the strongest theme I think that's pervasive throughout the plan is enhancing, supporting, doing whatever you can to make downtown a more viable, more attractive place for city residents to go. There is no magic pill, right? It takes time, and I mean, you guys are taking all the right steps. You're investing time and resources into trying to do that. So it's just a matter of what when something's going to kind of catch on.
Okay. Paul, if you have any comments as we go through here, feel free to give me a signal. Thumbs up one way or something.
I mean, I can always comment on just about anything.
Let's just hold that thought. All right, moving on.
All right. So you're right. A lot of the comments that he had are things that we do address already for the most part. Some of it a little bit tangentially or not directly from his comments, but a lot of his comments were related to revitalizing downtown, making it more attractive to businesses and to residents, and just continuing to build a strong network of support between the city and the Chamber of Commerce and the local businesses. Well, again, a lot of these are already mentioned under existing goals that we have throughout the plan.
Okay.
So I will move on. Oh, and one comment I also did want to add, because he and I did talk a lot about festivals downtown, events downtown, the desire to try and bring things there. And he understands it's not really a great option. There's not a lot of ability to actually close any streets downtown or to draw people there. But perhaps we could also address that rather than drawing people downtown to the businesses, maybe incorporating businesses and aspects of the downtown into events that are held at the park, because that's something that he noted. Everything is held at the park because it's a great facility and it can hold everybody and it's got the space. But somehow bringing businesses into the community events at the park rather than necessarily holding events in the downtown. That's something that does kind of exist under some of the goals as well. You could say under the downtown revitalization or under the goals for the community facilities, talking about holding events at the park.
Well, I was gonna say, some of that is up to the business owners, because I mean, I've seen Paul down at I saw him at the flea market or whatever that was, whatever that thing was where there was a crap ton of people and it was really muddy. But yeah, so I mean, that's an example of one of the downtown businesses saying, hey, I'm a downtown business, here I am, here's my stuff, this is what we do, and that's perfect to me. That's exactly what should be happening, but I wish there were more.
I think that a lot of his thoughts on this were that in the past, there's been a lot of support from the past economic development director. And recently that's kind of been lacking from his end. He feels that a lot of the network of support that existed to facilitate things like that and to kind of bring businesses together and bring ideas like that together was lacking currently, but he is looking forward to the new development director and thinks that that's a positive step forward. So. Okay. So I will move on to the next person we interviewed, which was Bill Jones from Evapco. He didn't have a ton of comments or suggestions, but the main one was that he mentioned Evapco, FlowServe, and some of the other area employees do have a desire to work together to support and improve the city where they can. It just seems to me that there's not necessarily an existing organized effort to do so. Again, he talked about the new economic director and the reinstatement of the Main Street program and the fact that those were positive step forward. Again, these are already existing in some of our goals. So I think the only addition that maybe I would suggest is where we have under public safety, one of our goals is strengthen community engagement through partnerships with schools, churches, and civic groups, and maybe just adding businesses to that list.
I was concerned that he put a lot of emphasis on the county. I thought the city here was user-friendly. The amount of effort I thought that we put forth as a city should have a little bit more weight than what it appears Mr. Jones was expressing here. I mean, I appreciate that the county was recognized, but what can we do more in the comp plan to make city government more user-friendly?
I think the first bullet point on the second page of the Evapco piece kind of sums it up, that the city is not really able to offer subsidies or incentives like the county can for somebody of their scale. That, you know, we can't give them, you know, waive benefit assessment fees for water. You know, we just don't have that luxury because we need to pay our bills and, you know, recover our investment to develop the capacity. So the county has more opportunity to play in the big leagues, I guess, so to speak, than we do. With you know, grant opportunities and loan forgiveness and things of that nature.
Yeah,
Welcome, Chris. I'm glad you can make it.
sorry I'm a little late.
All right, thank you. Anyway, so feel free to chirp in
The only
whenever.
thing I was going to chime in on that is that, you know, as far as the big businesses are concerned, there is very little that we can do as the city because there simply isn't the money there, and also what we get from them is not large enough to try to provide. It's not like, you know, the benefit to the county of property taxes from all the employees and stuff like that, because their employees don't all live in town. So it's hard for us as the town to provide that kind of incentive on that kind of scale. You know, what we could do is things on a smaller scale, which would be, you know, like benefit assessments, forgiveness or something like that, for smaller scale things on you know, on, I would say on not just the Main Street, but even, you know, Baltimore Street all the way down. You know, to someone who would say, you know, do an infill commercial development somewhere like down where Grandma Jem's used to be or something like that, where offering that kind of assessment might be enough of a incentive. But that's probably about as big as we can get.
Did they also get their 5% discount on the water rate? Different subject, but anyway. They did mention that 20 to 25% of their employees are local. The majority of them are from Littlestown and Hanover area. I thought that was interesting. I think that's about it for Evapco.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, let's move on to Caring and Sharing Ministries. I spoke with Linda Gaynor, who is their secretary, and she's been working with them for over a decade. She had a lot of great insight to share. Let me see where my list is. So, okay. She didn't necessarily have specific suggestions. She had a lot of concerns that were kind of part of larger issues. One of them is funding for them. That's just something that I think will always be a struggle. And I'm not sure how that necessarily applies to the comp plan or if it even does apply. But one thing that was also a concern for her was transportation. This is for people in Taneytown to be able to go to the churches that are hosting these services, and for people who rely on programs like Meals on Wheels or transportation to medical appointments, things like that. It's just been an ongoing issue. A lot of people walk to reach the churches and these meals that they offer. And she said, it's been very hot lately, and there's a significant decrease of attendance in those times, which may mean that people are just going without food because it's too hot. So part of our transportation goals are about making it, easier to access different things with maybe assessing paths or making areas more walkable, which could address some of that concern. Other than that, I don't know that assessing the option for public transportation or buses is really an option in Taneytown at this point.
I think it was nice that she did mention that about the newsletter, and I think we are moving forward with the newsletter still going out again, right?
The mayor's having conversations with a local newspaper publisher still. He's still hoping that that's going to be the vehicle that's used.
I think that's a way to connect people.
Yes, because she also mentioned a lot of the churches are having less and less attendance each year, and a lot of their volunteer and financial support comes from those members. So using that, the newsletter was a big way for them to not just to advertise the services they offer, but to ask for volunteers or donations and other kinds of support. She did mention that in the past, it was a free service where the churches could put ads in the newsletter, and then it seemed like that was no longer the case at the last time that the newsletter was still functioning. So that's something that she had a concern about, is if they have to pay for it, they can't afford it. So it's just another element to think about. So that was the main comments for Caring and Sharing. And the last interview was with Kevin Smith, the Department of Public Works. And his main thoughts were about putting an emphasis on smart paced growth with infrastructure or utility responsibilities shared by developers, to focus on strategic capital improvements and funding planning, and to focus more support on core infrastructure. So this is what we already address in the plan. Some of the goals that address that are: in land use, we say preserve Taneytown's small town character while encouraging strategic growth and redevelopment. And some of those implementation steps talk about more paced growth in the way that he was referencing. We also talk about that in ensure police, fire, and emergency services keep pace with population growth under public safety. And then several other goals throughout the plan also kind of tangentially address this concern as well. So we don't really need to add anything additional to the plan unless we wanted to clarify the wording of any of the goals or implementation steps to really directly address his thoughts.
Comments? So any of these comments that was made, would they change anything that we've done in, so far that needs to be added or modified?
Nothing major, maybe just adding a word here or there, like adding businesses to that list of uh, who we're the city's coordinating with on public events and things like that. But otherwise, a lot of this is really already addressed in the plan or could feasibly be considered addressed under some of the more prominent goals.
Okay.
So.
Have any comments?
No.
I'm good.
All right, and you're going to continue trying to make contact with some of the other key people, or where are we at here with this?
We certainly can try again and reach out. Yeah. See if there's any additional thoughts that can support or add to the goals and things that we have here.
Yeah, but I think the one individual that would be helpful, just because we are such a core piece of Taneytown, is you know, the people from Antrim.
Right.
I agree with
Okay.
that one.
Yeah,
I made an attempt to get a hold of the owner out there and unsuccessful so far.
okay.
I may take a stab at that because I know Richard and Dort, so.
Richard T. So, Paul?
I was just going to make the comment, there's a possibility that some of the VIPs that didn't necessarily, I was going to make a comment that some of the VIPs that didn't necessarily respond, many of those were hit up for the survey, and it's quite possible that a lot of the major businesses, except for VAPCO and FlowServe, members of the organizations responded, and that might be why the response was a little bit lighter than you had hoped.
Could be right.
Feedback was provided either online or otherwise,
Survey instead of, okay.
Right.
which kind of undermined the in-person, because that's a good, in my opinion, it's a good way to promote with the major stakeholders, you know, that the city is thinking of them and, you know, is looking for their feedback. So, you know, it would have been nice if, like the American Legion or Senior Center or the History Museum, though I know many of their members did respond, or they said they were going to, for what that's worth.
Probably correct. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, and as I said, I don't think, you know, one thing that this, even with these limited number of interviews, it does reinforce, it's a lot of the same themes that we saw through the survey responses to begin with. So doesn't seem to be any like outliers or any you know, significant insight that we don't really already have or haven't really already addressed, I don't think.
Yeah, certainly nothing was a surprise.
Move on to the housing and community design plan.
Yes, let me pull that up and share that.
Is this just the, all the changes that we put in after the last round?
Yes.
Okay.
Any comments on those?
Nothing I didn't already say at the first round.
The project we did on corner of Harney Road, is that the only one that really fits into the affordable housing?
It's probably the only purpose-built affordable housing project that we've had.
Successfully.
Yes. I mean, certainly there are other individual properties around town that are affordable for people earning less than the area median income and, you know, a lot participate in voucher programs and things, but Taneytown Crossing is the only one that was developed for that market.
Yeah, I mean, I was not in favor of that in the beginning.
I wasn't either, but that's.
Nobody was.
I'm-
But
I'm
it has
impressed.
turned out very well, and it's actually a model. I am part of the housing study group for the county comp plan, and that has been raised a number of times as a good example of workforce housing done well and brought to life.
You know, it's something, because this chamber was packed when they were in front. You
I remember that night.
And most of them were against it. Now, if you went back now to those people, and I'm one of them, I would have changed my mind. So,
I mean, my biggest concern was the parking. I just didn't think, only allowing 1.5 spaces.
no.
So do we have other areas within the city limits that can be zoned for
Well, that's a very
another
valid
project
question.
like that?
There are a number of infill parcels in the city that we could do something similar with, or something similar could be done with. We would have to find the right developer. We would have to find, for example, over off of, I guess, is that Westview Drive, where we just did the water line? There's, of course, I think the first parcel there belongs to the Lutheran Church. It's actually, or to the cemetery people. And then across Pump House Road, there's another parcel there that's partially in the city. I'm not sure exactly where the city boundary lies, and I think it cuts across that parcel for whatever reason. That would be another opportunity for that same kind of development. Then there's the parcel over behind the tannery barn that they'd like to do something with, and the question is what? And I think that some kind of mixed use is kind of in their mind there, but they're going to have to come to us and tell us what they are looking for there.
That's something that can go in the plan.
It could.
One of our goals to utilize those spaces.
Or,
Or
what could
something
be
like
in, what could be in the plan is that we need to be open to changing our zoning or how, with it, being more flexible in zoning changes for parcels like that. I don't know what that parcel off of Westview is zoned. I know the one behind Tannery Barn, I think is zoned industrial.
That's the current zoning, yes.
Yeah.
You're talking about the 14 acres,
Yeah.
roughly.
Yeah, the whole parcel's 22, but really there's only 14 you can do anything with. Yeah, that's the one they're talking about, and, because when it was zoned industrial, it was noted on the plat that there is no access from anywhere other than from across from the glass property. But if we were to change that zoning, to allow, mixed-use residential kind of thing, then you could, not only could you allow access, but then you could actually create some kind of through path through that property out to Frederick Street.
I think this conversation is very interesting because on the one hand, we talk about the need for affordable housing, which tends to be, smaller and of a higher density, but then this commission frequently advocates for larger lot subdivisions and discourages the higher density type development. So it seems like there's a little bit of a disconnect, that it's almost like we recognize a need, but we don't really want to see that. We want the bigger lot, more suburban style. It seems to be the commission's preference when we talk about density. Or at least, I might say a majority of the commission.
I think that's kind of the thought in large format densities, but I think for the infill development, I think we got to really think about changing how we look at that.
Yeah, as
I
I say,
agree.
I think we're looking at two different things, because you've got the infill, which I believe is addressed in a few different places.
It is.
But then you've got the other density areas where, like, I'm sorry, Meads Crossing feels claustrophobic when I go through there. So it's different areas for different things for different areas.
Right, I guess you need to match it to suit the surroundings.
That's correct.
And I think obviously to a lot of people, Meads Crossing is not attractive, and yet when they were building it, they sold very rapidly.
As fast as they could put 'em up.
They could, right, they were selling and settling, as quick as we could get use and occupancy inspections. So obviously that style development appeals to somebody. It
Yeah.
may not appeal to me or you,
Yeah,
but
because
it appealed to.
I looked at it
you
when,
know,
because that was one of
a
the
lot of
places where I
people.
was gonna move in, and I looked at it, and then I saw how close everything was, and a few other things, and I was like, no, I think I'm okay, and that's where I ended up where I am.
Other
Yeah, so
comments?
I think the plan does, this is the infill development that we're talking about and looking for those opportunities. And what, I don't know the various property owners that we're talking about, but, and, I'm always hesitant to actually put those specific properties on a map, right, within the plan. But I think talking about it in these terms is sufficient to, generate that support and interest in those.
I think we could identify a number of individual tracts and parcels without having to identify property owners. I think we could just say that, this are potential targets for progressive developmental, progressive zoning ideas.
Right. So Jim, would you be the person we would sit down with and try and kind of go through and identify those specific things, or should we get together with you and maybe Chris, or maybe just some other individuals we can talk about where those might be and what might be most appropriate?
I'd be happy to meet with you guys off,
Okay.
outside of the
Yeah.
larger group and
Yeah.
identify some of those.
Okay.
Of course, the whole group, will have a chance to talk about
Absolutely.
land use designations and
Yeah.
things like that, but I can probably give you some of the background of the specifics they're talking about.
Okay, that'd be great.
And once you determine them, if you would provide us with a map showing those spots on the map, would be very helpful.
Yeah. Yep.
Because we can talk about them here without actually seeing them on the map.
Yeah,
It's a
because some
difference.
might not make sense, and it depends on where the infrastructure is and how the what the transportation service is like. So, yep.
Right, you could identify parcels without being specific about what you want to do with them.
Okay.
Careful with the word flexible zoning.
Yeah, we already had
We
that
want to stay
discussion.
away from that.
Yeah, we already talked about that. Yeah.
That must have been last month's conversation that I missed.
Well, it was a while ago.
No, I think
yeah.
you started it. Oh. All right. So we good on that then?
Somebody else gave me a run for my money on blathering about stuff.
You good on the housing?
I'll, just for our absent member, I'm just gonna go ahead and say, this would all be fixed with 1 acre lots with brick houses,
Yes,
and we'll keep on trucking.
yes.
All right, we ready to move on to the municipal growth element?
Yes, please.
Alrighty. I guess we'll just go like we've been doing and go page by page. This first page is really a reiteration of what's in the demographic data. So there's really nothing new on this page. Any comments?
I was gonna say, there is one comment. We've already blown past 2030, and we're pushing towards 2040
Notice that.
on the actual numbers of people who live in Taneytown. So the projections are way off.
Okay, so these projections were made with the bicentennial survey information.
Okay.
So
But the
That's
county, the
something-
county numbers now have us at about 8,200.
okay, interesting. Okay, yeah, we'll take a look
Because
into
after
that.
2020 is when Meads Crossing came online and that, so that added a chunk.
So you can go through and correct that then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can forward you the most recent population estimates that the county has provided, But I wasn't sure if we have like a, you know, a hard stop date for the data that's going into the plan. You know, I know we can't keep, you know, changing the numbers as we go through because we get new data every month. So is there, you know, is there like a time frame that we should say, you know, all of the data that goes into this is as of, you know, 2020, year-end 2024, or do we roll it back to the census, or I don't know if there's like a typical way it's done.
Yeah, we definitely need to include the Meads Crossing, so maybe you know, where Meads Crossing gets 90 or 95% of all of the units being occupied, that might be where you know, because there's nothing major in between the end of Meads Crossing and what's coming next.
Yeah, I was gonna say, from my understanding, it's been pretty steady for a couple of years, which would match up with the fact that Mead's filled up.
Yeah, it's been pretty flat.
Yeah. Until we
what
blow
they-
up the next housing development.
What are you looking at, Jim, as far as,
Well, I'm just thinking that I feel like the plan should be consistent in that, like, if we're using population estimates, say, as of, just so there's like a nice even stopping point, say, you know, December 31st, 2024, that should also be the stopping point for the water production, for the wastewater treatment plant flows. Like, I just feel like the data that goes into the plan should be at a, you know, at a consistent point throughout the plan. So,
Yeah,
you know, we shouldn't have like 2023 data for one chapter
Right.
and 2025 data for the next chapter and so on. So I think we need to, and maybe that's a conversation, you know, for Craig and Emily and I'd have, like, you know, what's a good stopping point to, you know, be able to have solid data, but and just kind of lock things in.
I would think that the end of the 2023, 2024 fiscal year, you know, June 30th of 24, or the end of the calendar year of 24, either of those would be good, because that would collect both the Meads Crossing data, and then also in terms of the sewers capacity, would catch the I&I inflow reductions of the Roberts Mill project.
All the upgrades.
Yes,
Yeah.
and a lot of the you know, the recent upgrades to the sewage treatment plant. So that presents the most accurate picture. That was one of the things that was frustrating at the Housing Commission, or the Housing Group meeting last night, was that they were working from data from 2020 in terms of what our sewer capacity was here in Taneytown. And it's like, well, that's not anywhere close to being accurate today.
Yeah,
Work that
I
out
think
and-
that's a good suggestion.
with Craig and Emily?
Well, yeah, we'll
Yeah,
determine
set
that
something
and-
up in
and
the next
Make
couple weeks.
adjustments, whatever needs to be.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Any other comments on the first page before we move on to the second?
Excuse me, what was that comment?
Else on the first page?
I'm good.
So the second page just talks about population projections. Again, this will be changed. So I think for now, we probably can skip over this part until that's
Yeah, so I was figuring, yeah, page 2 is gonna change.
Yes, it will.
Yep.
Okay. So the third page, we did a quick build-out analysis, taking the existing land in Taneytown, both in the growth area and within the city boundary. Anything that's undeveloped and zoned for future residential, or land that could be zoned for future residential. And we figured out basically at full build out how many housing units and roughly what population increase would that be if every bit of land in Taneytown were to be developed. So we have that note there at the bottom that's how we calculated the population and the housing units using that mix of densities.
That's actually, I had a question on the density mixes, just because I don't know how accurate that is for what's actually going on. I would say that most of the town probably fits the suburban mix more than the urban mix. Uh, uh, I just, like I said, I saw that and it kind of tweaked me a little bit just because the percentages seemed off based upon what's actually existing.
Sure. Yeah, and this mix was taken, I didn't do the build out, but the person who did it, I asked them where they got those numbers and they said it's kind of like a generic Maryland standard percentages. But so that's why I put that note in there because I wanted to make sure, if that's not the mix that we feel is suitable for Taneytown or that we want to promote for Taneytown, then we can change those numbers.
Well, it just seems like if that's the general urban, as it says, general urban development pattern typical of Maryland, you're lumping Taneytown, Baltimore City, everybody else everybody into that, and it seems like there would be a greater disparity between a small town out in mostly rural land as opposed to a very big city. But like I said, that was just something that stood out to me.
So no, I mean, I agree. That's, I'm glad that you're addressing it because we wanted to make sure. So do you feel, does the whole planning commission feel maybe that we should do either both of them at the 50% medium and 50% low density, or should we do what's in the city limits as the 50-50 mix and then maybe all low density for outside of in the growth area?
Well, but I mean, you're going to get different things in different areas. Like we were talking about those infill parcels a few minutes ago, and those I could see being a higher density without any issue whatsoever. I mean, we've already got higher density in these areas. But if you're developing, say, Sewell's or the other one whose name has run out of my brain,
Branch.
what?
Mountain Branch. Mountain Brook.
Mountain Brook.
Mountain Brook. I can never get that one right.
Yeah, Sewell's or Mountain Brook, those are going to be a vastly different setup than what you're going to get in just the little downtown area. So I'm not sure. I don't know what the right numbers are. It just seemed off.
Yeah. Well, let us reevaluate that, and we'll match it up with your current zoning.
Yeah, because it seems like most of our development is acreage-wise is going to be the medium and low that happens out there, but then we are going to have some infill stuff that's going to happen. So it's like I said, I'm not particularly arguing for it should be 30, 20, 50 or whatever because I just don't know. But it just those numbers seemed off.
Yeah, we'll like I said, we'll link it up more with the current zoning in place, and then see what those numbers look like.
Item.
I was looking at the combined growth section in the second column. First of all, I was gonna say it's a little weird thing to me because I remember what the growth section had a bunch of extra sections annexed outside the town that we'll see where all that goes, but pretty much without getting more of the, especially on the waterfront, without getting more recharge areas, we're not going to get any expansion. So we need to.
What are you trying to say as far as the comp plan here? You got me going in circles.
I was just say the thing I wrote was we don't have the resources to build at the rate that's being proposed in the comp plan.
We don't have it now, but we're looking at a 10-year projection, kind of. So what are we going to have 5 years out or 10 years out?
Well, but
By bringing this attention now, we have the opportunity to investigate or expand or whatever in the next
yeah.
5 to 10 years to meet these goals.
And council did modify the city code not too long ago to address the water recharge piece, that now it's incumbent on developers to bring the recharge for their project, for projects that haven't entered the pipeline yet. So, when any of these large parcels develop, they will be obligated to, provide the recharge necessary to serve their properties. And again, there still are some assumptions being made that, we will be able to obtain permits from MDE once we have the recharge and so on. But, that's a shift that the city made, so it really puts the onus on the developer rather than the city to go out and acquire that recharge.
Times has the state changed that figure too,
And
in the past 10 years.
And, maybe not so much in the past 10, but, but how, right, I mean, how the department calculates safe yield and things like that, is very, very conservative. So I think that has changed as staff at the Department of the Environment has changed.
As time changes, we may start using gray water. How far down the road that is. Westminster, I think, is investigating using it now.
They don't like the term gray water on that.
I
but
don't know what is the
Well,
terminology?
actually, yeah, it's
Reuse.
It is, yeah.
Pure Water Westminster, I think, is their
Pure water?
Pure Water,
It's,
I think, is their catchphrase.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of it. There is a term for it. I'm trying to think
Indirect
of what it is,
potable
but-
reuse.
Say that again?
Indirect potable reuse.
Okay.
And what's funny, of course, and this is just a side thing, but the Maryland Department of Environment, for whatever reason, is kind of brain set against using it directly. They want you to take this water that's as clean as it can possibly be and put it into a river or a reservoir and then draw it back out from there. They want it indirect, but it actually gets more dirty going into whatever that other water source is than it is, before it goes there.
The
So-
term gray water makes it a lot simpler.
Well, actually, it's not so much, because gray water is usually associated with like a
Bathwater and.
right,
Yes.
with drain water that can be reused within the home to flush toilets and things like that. So, it actually would be, and I think we've talked about it in years past, that, that potentially would be like a change in the county plumbing code to mandate that as part of new construction, so that, newer houses would use less potable water, and reuse, drain water to flush toilets and things like that. So it is actually a different thing.
Understand, right? All right. Clear up what you were,
I was gonna say, I'll let it go, but yeah, it just seems like we're not identifying what we're actually going to, like, this is what we're gonna grow. This is the water we're gonna need.
Well, I think maybe what we need to do, Craig, is identify it in the plan what city council has codified, which is that for larger scale developments, that those developers must bring in their own recharge source. And
Yeah,
that
and we do have
that it
that
would
in-
not be
in
incumbent
SEs.
upon the city to find that stuff directly.
Right. Yeah, and we do have that in here now. Like, for example, you might want to reserve, that capacity for those infill projects, right?
Right.
Rather than these projects on the.
Right, because you'd like to encourage that kind of project, and so you would say, okay, well, we can cover you.
Right,
But,
exactly.
but for the larger projects, you want them to bring their own.
Right. Yeah, yeah, they have to carry their own weight, essentially, yeah. And those policies are in here now, like with regards to having developers, bring that capacity with them, or pay for the expansion, or pay for whatever they need to support their projects. But on the other hand, just going back, right? So your zoning right now allows for maybe more capacity than what your infrastructure can currently support, which isn't out of the ordinary, right? Because you're not going to spend money and create this all this capacity for something that isn't necessary yet. So it grows with as the town grows. So I think I think we're covered on those policies, but we'll make sure we look at that and make sure it is reinforced very clearly.
Public services and infrastructure.
How are we on meeting all calls now? Because I've heard that we're getting help from other areas and on calls, especially during the day. When
We are, but
volunteers
that's
are
the
a
whole
little-
purpose of mutual aid. We go, if you're talking about our
Yeah.
ambulance calls, we go out of the area as much as we're in the area.
Okay. As long as it's back and forth, then cool. But yeah, I'm just because since we're looking ahead at what we're having to expand and everything else, I just didn't know whether we needed to move those expansion plans up or in order to cover more or what. Like I said, I don't know. I just
Yes, the movement with the county has made a difference.
okay.
Time is up to get out. If we're out already on a call, the next company's automatically.
Okay.
In one sense, it is an improvement. Like our second ambulance right now, one was in Union Bridge, now it's over in New Windsor because their ambulance is out of service. Again, when our first due ambulance is out, that's the company that comes in for mutual aid. I have a question here. The expansion you have is 2004. That should be 1994 when that second edition was added on.
Oh, under the,
Under public
the-
safety,
public safety, okay. I will change that.
company's 5-base station opened in 1974 and then expanded 2004. It was actually 1994.
Good.
Second edition was added on. Volume, did you pick the volume up from the county? Or how did you get the volume for calls?
That would have probably been from their website. So most of the EMS and fire websites have a counter on the side that lists how many calls they've taken, and a lot of them go back 10, 15 years. So that's where that number comes from. So those aren't necessarily also updated. So a lot of those I filled in before the end of 2024. So they might not have had full 2024 numbers either. Some of them also haven't necessarily updated those numbers in the last few months. So I can double check and make sure that all those numbers are up to date.
First paragraph of public schools, they're actually started on the Taneytown Elementary School addition now.
Yeah, it's underway.
They are.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's already
they are.
underway.
Yep.
Great, okay.
Before we get too much farther along, in the 2024 concurrency management report on the county's website, Taneytown was average response time 6 minutes 45 seconds. Fire late no response, Taneytown. Failed to respond 11.39%. Late 38.6 in the 2024 report. I don't know if those numbers sound at all familiar to you, Jim, but that's
Pretty much.
that's the most recent report that's available on the county site.
Good. Page,
Next page, the anticipated financing mechanisms.
I had one question that bled over, the parkland, was recreation. Can we put something in there about accessibility to the population? Cause I think we've got a decent sized park that's up 194, but you've got to drive to get to it. You can't, it's not very accessible to the town. It's just kind of isolated and out there, and you have to drive on a 2-lane road that I wouldn't send kids on a bicycle on.
There is a multi-purpose trail connector, proposed in the bike and pedestrian master plan, so I mean, there's a plan,
Yeah.
the hope to connect it for, non-vehicular traffic.
Yeah.
And, that's something that we may end up revisiting as we talk about the growth area and land use and things like that, because some of the parcels that trail would cross, are considering ag preservation and have requested to come out of the growth area. So we'll need to have those conversations at some point fairly soon.
referring to Bowling Park.
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna say that because I mean, I've been up there a couple of times, and yeah, you've got to drive to it. I mean, it's a windy road that you can't really ride a bike on without taking a chance.
I don't know if, if some of the parcels, some of the agricultural parcels on Fringer Road are looking at trying to get out of the DGA and into ag pres, but I can tell you that the county is looking at scaling back some things in the agricultural preservation to not interfere, so that they aren't granting preservation easements in places where it would interfere with a municipality's growth area. So they may want to do that. That may not be an option going forward.
Yeah, that's when we've had conversations with the county planning folks in recent years, not anything like, in the past couple months, but when we have talked about the idea of pulling properties out of our growth area, there's been concern from the county planning department that, the county plan, as with, generally smart growth throughout the state, is to concentrate development, in the municipalities and places where the infrastructure already exists. So the county's concern is if we shrink our intended growth area, then that affects their master plan for the population growth they anticipate. Then their question is, okay, well, if Taneytown's not going to accept this growth that we were expecting them to accept, where are we going to put it? So it's very interesting when you look at that, intergovernmental cooperation and trying to get everybody's plans to mesh together. So.
Really need to review the maps.
Yeah.
Maps are somewhere along the line here. It'd be nice to start talking about the maps. For different
There are
zones,
some very
different-
good maps in I was just, paging through, of course, looking on my phone, so I'm not seeing them in very large size. But it would be maybe useful to have some large scale of some of these maps printed.
Sure.
So that we can, put them up on the wall and really look at
Right,
them.
yes.
And, because I think we kind of brush through them because there's a lot of lines going in a lot of places here. But I think, excuse me.
Maybe for our next meeting, we can have the city map here.
Sure.
So if we have
Yeah.
questions, issues, we can,
And we can certainly, I don't want to spring it on Dan this evening, but, we can certainly bring maps up and put them on the screens as well. We just haven't quite reached that point.
Right.
Right. But, the nice thing about having them printed is you can have multiple ones.
Right. It kind of goes with the newsletter. If you have a paper copy, it's a lot easier to follow.
Yeah, we can definitely do that for you for next meeting.
I would like to see if we can, and maybe working with either Craig or Emily, or maybe the county's GIS folks, maybe we could take our existing comprehensive plan map and sort of update that to reflect things that have changed as far as properties that have gone into ag preservation since then, properties that have been, annexed where the zoning may not match up to what was on the 2010 comp plan, the city's acquired property that was going to be medium density and is now open space. So maybe we could develop a map that kind of shows a more current snapshot than the 2010 plan did. And that could be a good basis maybe for our starting point for discussions.
This is what we had for 2010, so we had a
Right.
couple of these.
Right.
Up to date, would really help.
Right. And like the Sewell annexation, for example.
Yes.
That annexation differs from what was on the comp plan map. And Bollinger Park, half of Bollinger Park, 40 acres of Bollinger Park is shown as medium density residential. And Festival Park is shown as medium density residential. So those things can all, have a spillover effect into the potential build-out figures and things like that too. So, and I guess for Greg and Emily, getting back to some of those, growth projections, I don't want to make extra work by updating projections and then coming in behind it and changing the maps, and then that throws all those projections out. So
Right.
maybe we should kind of put some of that on hold for right now. Because I hate to invest more time in it and then, go back and swap colors on the map, and that changes everything.
Absolutely.
On the financing mechanism. Okay,
All right, the next page about rural buffers and transition areas, which is not really something that Taneytown needs because it's already surrounded by a lot of agricultural uses. And then the beginning of these services and infrastructure outside of the growth area element.
One thing I'd like to say about that though is, and it's something that I've heard brought up, and I've seen, in some of the things that we've attended the last couple of years, is that we should be looking a little harder at graduated densities as you get out from the city core. Maybe it isn't a good idea to go and do a whole bunch of townhouses like Meads Crossing and have them all the way out at the edge of town, where they really should have been closer to the town center. That's something we weren't as smart about as we needed to be at the time, and now we're a little smarter about it. And maybe that's something that needs to be addressed in the plan.
Yeah, I think along those lines, it's looking at what those costs are to provide that infrastructure, the water and sewer to those, as the lots gets larger, right? You're serving your customers with a
Greater area, right?
lot more infrastructure and roads and all those things. So they all have costs associated with that. Yeah.
And I think when we talk about that transector, that diminishing density as you move away from the city center, we're not at the planning level. We're not talking about like the site designed for individual properties. We're just talking about like the overall density. So you might have 100-acre parcel that's designated as medium density residential. But the lay of the land or, environmental features might drive the design so that, say it is a mixture like Meads, that it's still within that same overall land use category, but at the planning level, the comp plan level, we don't really speak to, how each parcel is going to be designed. But I don't want to get too, create the impression that that's what the plan can do.
Right.
that goes back to, then maybe we should be looking at the net building area, not the gross.
Yeah, in terms of calculating your densities, certainly.
Right,
Yep.
And that would, of course, require a change in code, not that that's a bad thing, but it just means that we would have
I
to
was-
step up and make that change.
And I would be in favor of making that change to code, just because, in fact, it's in my notes to actually figure out how to do that. Because, yeah, it doesn't make any sense that if you've got just for round numbers, 100-acre parcel, and 20 of it is wetlands that you can't do anything with, now you were allocated 200 houses. I'm just throwing numbers out. Allocated 200 houses, but now you've taken those 200 houses and you've put them on 80% of the land, because that parcel that you weren't going to be able to do anything with anyway is counted in your overall thing. So,
Right.
yeah, so I do think that needs to be coming up soon.
And I think that that's probably going to be part of the discussion coming before council here in the next month or so with the community village application for
Right.
schools.
Yep.
Okay. So with that said, that's a concept you would like to see introduced in the plan? Just talking about just introducing that as a way to maybe more appropriately assign density to property.
I would say yes. I think,
Yeah, I'm all
Yes.
for it.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's say, I'm trying to write the ordinance, so yeah, I'm all for it.
yes.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts or comments on this page before we move on? No? All right, just continuing, the services and infrastructure outside of the growth area section.
How does, under policy guideposts, sorry, there's a bunch of those, stormwater management? How does the second one, how does that actually work? Where the off-site treatment is unavoidable, establish a per impervious acre credit, so developers fund retrofit projects inside the city, pond dredging, bioretention. How does that actually affect the runoff that we're getting from the impervious acre of the out of town stuff?
Of the out of town?
Well, because I thought this whole section is the outside of the growth area, the stuff that's on the edges. And the first one ahead of it is enter into a memorandum of understanding with Carroll County requiring on-site treatment of the runoff. But if they can't do that, I'm basically where I'm going is if Sewell's Farm or somebody else outside of Sewell's Farm, just outside of it, has a 10-acre parking lot outside of our town, but the water's kind of running into our area, how does dredging Roberts Mill Pond fix the problem that's coming off of that? Because it says pond dredging bioretention. Should this be aimed more at us dealing with the fact that we're getting this runoff? Or, because right now it's just, like I said, you could have something on that side of the town and they could pay for something that happens on the other side of the town and it doesn't actually fix the problem that just got made.
So you still would have to deal with the water, the volume of water, right? So you'd have to deal with, so you deal with the flooding aspect, right? But the water quality, maybe they can't get the recharge, or there's some aspect that would prevent them from meeting their water quality credits or volume that they need to require. If that's the case, then they would potentially have the ability to address a water quality issue somewhere offsite to negate or offset their impact. That's
I guess theoretically, sort of like the nutrient credit trading at the state level that, you know, I don't know if anybody's really successfully done that or not, but where, you know, if it's impractical to, you know, make improvements at spot X, maybe you can overtreat at spot Y, so the net effect is, you know, an overall improvement. know if that's
Yeah,
kind
yeah.
of the idea of that.
Right, other than just saying, look, we can't, for whatever reason, we are unable to meet our water quality requirements. And if they can, there's a process to document that, why you can't do that. But instead of just saying, okay, fine, you don't meet it. Well, okay, if you don't meet it here, we have an issue here that you could help out with that would kind of uh, be credit for the situation you're creating or addressing.
How does the parking area that EPCO is putting in off of Crouse Mill Road, what effect will runoff from that affect Mountain Brook?
So the county.
Who looks at that
Well, right.
area and what happens?
So going forward, we have now adopted Carroll County's stormwater management ordinance. So the same thing that you guys see, and our ordinance was very similar to the county's before because the state mandates that your ordinance require, all these certain aspects. So our ordinance wasn't much dramatically different from the county's anyhow. But just like we ensure that our site development plans, CDM Smith used to review the stormwater for us. Now it's going to be the county, but the county has, their own ordinance, so they're reviewing it just like we would, if it was in town, it's the same ordinance they have to comply with, outside of the city. So they're going to have to do the same bioretention swales and, detention ponds or underground storage. I don't really know how they're treating it for that particular project, but they're, they need to mitigate the runoff from that lot just like they would if it was inside the city limits. So anywhere in the county, if it's, that level of disturbance of, 5,000 square feet or more, or that level of impervious surface, wherever in the county now, that stormwater ordinance is consistent through the entire county. I'm not 100% sure about Westminster. They may still have their own standard.
But if that's the case, does this even apply anymore?
Right.
I think it still would, right? Because you still might have a situation where you're not be able to meet a certain parameter, and
But then they
and
wouldn't get approval from the county.
well, you might, right? If you can document it, that you've done everything you can to meet the requirement. However, you're falling short on certain aspects, that they won't completely deny a project based on that. So this isn't for situations where there might be benefits that can be derived somewhere else, and essentially again offsetting for whatever criteria is not able to be met on a given site.
We haven't used the terms MOU with the county.
I mean, we do have memorandums of understanding with the county on a handful of things, but maybe not on a specific development project. So we have,
So would that be with the city or with the developer, the MOU?
generally, the MOUs are between the city and the county,
Sit in the county.
or MOAs, memorandums of agreement. That's what we have in place for like the stormwater retrofits, where the county funds the majority and the city funds a certain portion based on our proportion of impervious surface, relative to the total of the county. So I guess the agreements with developers will be more along the lines of their public works agreements that would specify what they are obligated to and what the city's going to do.
How's this going to look or work as far as our comp plan? Basically what you're saying right here, policy guideposts. Going to be is that what we're saying?
Yeah, recognizing that these situations will arise or could arise, right? How will the city address those situations when they come up? And these are a couple policy elements that could address those situations.
Okay if that happens.
No, I'm good.
Okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay. What does first do capital funds? Falls under public safety, fire and EMS, first due capital funds. Does that mean like the Taneytown Fire Company's first due area? Some type of funding or something going to be passed on to the developer to, what are you trying to say there?
So again, these are developers outside of the growth boundaries, outside the growth area, but we're still going to burden EMS or public services. So they would, yeah, for example, first due, right, the companies that we were responding, right, they would have to fund, provide some type of fund or contribution to those entities to fund their facilities.
So if we put this in our master plan, we're actually saying that the next developer coming to town or site, we're going to require them to establish a capital fund. I
Well,
mean, we're
you'd
putting
have to-
something in here that we're saying we're going to do, with not an understanding how it's going to happen.
So
if it's gonna
recognizing,
That's the whole master plan, but keep going.
Maybe I'm finally catching on what you've been trying to say.
There you go.
so, I mean, recognizing that those properties will have an impact on, that development will have an impact on city services, right? Uh, there needs to be a mechanism in place so they can assist in funding those services as needed. So just putting it in here doesn't mean that it's going to get funded, right? Then you need to take it to the next step and develop an ordinance or some means to formalize that funding.
Problem is if it's outside of city limits, even if it's in the growth area or outside the growth area, if it's outside of city limits, we would have no leverage to require such a fund. That would be a county issue. Even though it certainly is the
It'd have to be another
equitable thing to
MOU.
do, but it would, how would we as the city have any leverage to do that to a development that happens in what is the county?
I don't see the county being an issue as much as the city. How would the city go about doing it?
That's what, well,
Right.
but that's the thing, is that, yeah, if it's not within our jurisdiction, we can't make them do that.
Well, even if we can, how can we make them do it in our jurisdiction? I mean, we can't put a fire tax or something like that. I mean, how can we put something like this in writing and no way see it forward?
My understanding is, like, public safety type impact fees or benefit assessments are very challenging. From speaking with the former city attorney on that, we have a $100 per dwelling public safety fee. We had discussed the idea of an expansion of our police department building based on growth and having more officers and maybe picking up some features that we weren't able to afford when the station was built originally. And we talked about the idea of, well, okay, this is a capital improvement. So generally we can use benefit assessment or impact fees for capital improvements. But the idea of it being public safety related was, I know, concerning to the former city attorney, because there is like the general expectation that's like an essential government service that your general tax dollars go towards. I'm not sure if Craig and Emily, if you've dealt with any municipalities who have like public safety impact fees, how they've done it, but I know for us, you know, it was like I was thinking, okay, finally, I have a price tag for a building expansion. We know that this is going to be, you know, to house X number of more officers, 2 officers per 1,000. That equals that many dwelling units. Divide the numbers, and that's our impact fee. So I was like really excited that it's like, okay, I've got a formula, I've got a, you know, a price. Now we can finally set a number. And I was like, not so fast. So, and then it never moved forward, and the police department expansion's kind of been kicked down the road a little bit on the capital improvement program anyhow, but,
It's also complicated by the fact that the fire department is a private organization, not a city department.
So it's a private organization, but it's under the city's charter. Taneytown, the city of Taneytown fire company is under the city charter. So the city is responsible to have a fire department in its corporation.
I'll have to go read up on that.
I guess just to put a pin in that one, let us kind of relook at that to see if there is any kind of mechanism to really make that enforceable to
Yeah, because
outside
the
city
same
limits.
principle would apply to the having somebody outside the town with impervious acreage pay for something inside the town. How does that get enforced either?
Yeah, same.
It's the same principle.
Yeah, yeah.
Basically, if they're outside the town, unless the county helps us, we got nothing.
Yeah, you gotta rely on the county.
Okay. Move on for now. I have a lot of concerns about that last section. Talk about it. You guys need to work on it a little bit and come back with some more information.
Okay, yep.
That, moving on to the next page. That protection of sensitive areas.
Well, I was gonna say, under the transportation real quick, I mean, it's kind of, when it comes to traffic, when it comes to traffic, the problem is the square. That's the bottleneck. And I'm not sure what all, I mean, we can add some turn lanes by taking away some parking spaces, but you can't make the square any bigger.
Right.
Unless you start taking out buildings.
Right.
So there's really anything that we do for traffic aside from alternate routes is a Band-Aid.
How important is the parking meters that we can't make changes there? What are we gaining from parking
yeah,
other
I
than
think the
spaces in
meters
front
is a
of?
whole separate conversation. But, right, but it's.
Well, I'm
it's-
just thinking about.
I was gonna say, that's Chris with a hacksaw trying to take out the meters, but that's another story. Not you, the other one.
But that's to say, when you have 2 major highways go right through the heart of the city.
But yeah, I mean, but that seems to be, that's the crux of a lot of the things that they're talking about in this whole wider section of, I mean, we go back to the festival thing. You can't close the roads. Okay. You go with traffic. It's all there. And you can add a turn lane, but if you've got traffic backed up to the circle, then
Right, 2 more cars in the turn lane aren't
two
gonna
more
do all
cars in
of
a turn lane isn't gonna do a heck of a lot.
Right.
You can go to one side at a time. I don't know what that would do to fix it. So, I mean, that's,
There was a comment by somebody in the key people about changing the light cycles or something for straight through for length of something like, I can't remember the exact
Yeah,
wording
it
on
was
it.
like, yeah, it was the timing of the cycle. Yeah.
Well, didn't we do that, Jim? Didn't we try, or the state try to do that?
Excuse me. State Highway has modeled all sorts of different light configurations and flow configurations, and, you know, comes back with the, you know, existing setup provides the greatest throughput during peak hours. So anything that they do, any different cycle with the light, like, westbound goes, then eastbound goes, or things like that, will reduce the total number of vehicles that can flow through the intersection during peak hours. That said, they have approved a left turn lane, a left turn signal for westbound traffic on 140 at the square. It's, I think, expected to be through design in August, but it's pretty far down in the queue of projects to be constructed. And the benefit there, I think, is to have a modest impact to reduce stacking at the intersection. But, then you have westbound can be going, or, but then eastbound isn't. So those cars aren't getting through the intersection. So, it still has an overall degrading effect on the total intersection, but it could reduce the backup a little bit on the westbound.
But it really is the westbound that is the primary issue. So, even if that turn signal were only active from 3 to 6 in the afternoons on weekdays, and you probably would want to use it as much as possible anyway, because it's the issue isn't the throughput. The issue is the short amount of stacking in the left turn lane on West Baltimore Street at the square. You get a tractor trailer and 2 cars, somebody's butt stuck out in the through lane, and so nobody goes anywhere. And that's right, and that's where the backups start, and that's what would be hopefully picked up by the left turn signal.
Is there any talk about northbound 194?
Not really, because I don't think that there's even less
'Cause
turn lane.
But I'm saying that I've been personally all the way back to the dog leg after Evapco.
Yes, that's not unusual.
But that's a let out because of a VAPCO.
Right.
Well, that's because VAPCO said 80% of their employees come from
Hanover and
over Littlestown area.
Littlestown, right.
But with the overall theme of this particular section, both in the Parks and Rec and the transportation section, again, we need to look at the fact that we're trying to get concessions out of people that we can't get concessions out of. So so it falls under the same thing that we need to be looking at with the other side.
So evidently, progress is being made. But at least it's going to be an effort. How that's going to influence the comp plan, I'm not sure. And if it's something that really we're going to put in the comp plan,
I was
I'm
gonna say, I
not sure.
think traffic's gonna remain an issue even with the
Yeah.
turn lane.
Right.
I think that's a safe assumption.
And I think Harry, summed it up earlier on, that, anything we do that isn't the bypass is a Band-Aid,
Right.
Light timing or coordinating the lights or turn lanes or eliminating parking, they're right. They're very modest, and
The city was built around the square.
Oh, no, I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Move on.
I'm good.
Jump back up to the protective sensitive areas. Was there anything particular there?
My only question on the next page, under implementation pathway, is it seemed like a lot of this stuff was already in the regulations. So we've got forest conservation, we've got,
It was just a repeat. I caught the same thing too. It's pretty much redundant.
it's like, yeah, the implementation pathway is keep doing what you're doing. So I'm not sure how that, how that goes.
So Emily, I don't know if you have any input on that, but I think that it's looking at what you have, right? Because what you are, I mean, you do have a pretty strong protection framework in place already. So it's just looking at areas where that could be enhanced or maybe or if there are opportunities. Like for example, and we should put that in here, this net density versus gross density, gross acreage calculations for determining densities. That would be a good thing to put into this section.
Put that under short term, I'm gonna be pushing.
Okay.
I was gonna say,
We'll keep that
that's
at
pretty
the,
much ongoing.
we'll keep that on the 0 years.
Okay. And then the last page. Future development is expected too. The last bullet in there, I think, is right on target. Economic development goals and the businesses and the city all becoming as a team, going in the same direction.
I did have a question on the first one. Is the downtown the cultural and economic heart?
Should be.
Well, but my big question mark after that is how?
Right, how?
Because we can say this, but and this has been my problem with most of the things where we've mentioned downtown and things like this in here is we need to fix downtown. We're going to have downtown be extra vibrant and everything else, but there's nothing in the middle. There's no any kind of even semi-directional blueprint as to how to get to that based on the physical limitations that we have.
There have been, I don't know, 3 downtown plans that have been commissioned over the years that have gathered a tremendous amount of dust, and none of which have been actively implemented. I think that we need to, as we move forward with a new economic development director, take a look at what those plans said. Is there any value in any of those things? And maybe try to cobble together our own plan based on our actual experiences of what we have here and what we have to work with. I think that it is difficult for an outside consultant to come to Taneytown and understand the issues that surround a lot of things in downtown Taneytown. So I think that any kind of plan like that needs to be developed from the inside. And frankly, I don't think that we don't really have a plan right now. We have some vision, we have some ideas, but we don't really have a plan. And I think that that's something that the new economic development director is going to be working towards.
Yeah, and again, just these statements are in here because that's our takeaway from all the input that we've had from the commission as well as from the surveys. There's a tremendous desire to make downtown vibrant, right? But there are hurdles in the way that are making it difficult, right? And one is the traffic patterns. So I think if that's not still the vision or the direction that the city wants to go, then we need to change it. But I think there's still a lot of resources being put into making that a reality, whether it's through the Main Street programs and the economic development director, those elements. I don't see anything that's changed what the city's desire is for downtown.
This is another one of those very interesting aspects of planning and policy, I guess, that we have, and I gave this little speech at the fire hall when we were contemplating design standards for the historic district, that, for many years, we've, had language in the comprehensive plan and in the city code, about preserving the historic aspect and things like that. But then when it comes to implementing a policy that does that, the city historically has backed off in the face of any opposition. We did eventually pass our design standards, albeit watered down from what they were originally envisioned to be. But I think that, this group or a larger group could, and perhaps when we get our Main Street effort back up and running, or even, the informal start that may be happening in the next month or so, maybe we have a brainstorming session with that group and just talk about, what would improve the climate downtown, overall. Could it be, strengthen historic preservation? Could it be rental property registration for residential rental properties? What could change the current equation a little bit? And, there may or may not be political will to implement some of those things, but perhaps those could be, become implementation steps in the plan. And I know that pushes things out a little bit, but, that might be a conversation worth having.
Yeah, and
Just,
just like,
if you don't have to worry about votes or getting it passed, just take those blinders off for a little bit and say, what would make a difference?
I think as I mentioned to you, we talked about this a few months ago when I was still on the commission. Are we headed to a place where there aren't any businesses downtown? And we certainly have taken a lot of steps in that direction. And the problem is, of course, and the thing that we have seen is that once you lose storefronts to residential occupancy, it's virtually impossible to get those back. And if part of what so many people that answered the survey say they want is that small town feel, well, that begins with your downtown, right? That begins with shops where the shopkeepers and where you walk downtown to get some of the things that you are, that you want to buy, you have to create that atmosphere. One of the things that comes from the Main Street ethos is that you have to make your downtown a place where people want to live. And when it's a place where people want to live, then it's a place where people want to be, and then it's a place where people want to visit. Right now it's a place where people live because that was the choice they had. And we have to change that. We have to make it a place you want to be.
So it's getting late here, so let's, Paul?
So this would be a good segue, based on the last two conversations, to reemphasize some of my comments from the last meeting related to, it actually would be now on page 74 of the implementation steps under housing. And this is where what would make a difference, part of a difference, Chris is also saying, is that we raise the bar on the expectations of property owners and landlords, especially in the downtown district, to raise their standards of external and internal maintenance. I know this is a great concern and a criticism by many in the community. Our downtown sometimes looks like a slum town. That might be a little bit of an exaggeration. So many nice things are going on in downtown, and we want to see growth, but I think that we need to have a goal, and I don't know how you frame this, with all of the codes and things that you can do with the county and state. But we've got to raise the bar and hold our landowners and landlords accountable for their properties to fall in step with the vision that we have with the new strategic plan, economic development, Main Street. I can't emphasize that anymore as being important at this point in time. So I'm hoping that it can be incorporated into the master plan somehow in the way that is respectful. It also doesn't discriminate against low-income, affordable housing, and subsidized housing. Challenging, but you know, we should be able to have those three segments to be able to be comfortable within having nice property standards. So please make this an important emphasis to the degree.
I agree 100%. I would like to see some type of standards, maintenance standards or something going on. I mean, right now, our design standards is basically just the historical area, right? Downtown area,
Correct,
from
right.
point A to point B either
Exclusive
way.
of the industrial district.
I'd like to see a design standard fit the city of Taneytown, period. I mean, as you travel some of these back streets, I mean, you forget where you're at.
Yeah, I think that, you know, landlord registration and minimum livability standards, however you can craft those so that they're more objective than subjective, are the first steps. And we don't even know, I don't think we know how many rental properties there are in town right now. And then, you know, one of the things, and we see it from our business, is that there are now starting to pop up some short-term rental properties, Airbnb style properties, and we have no mechanism at all for dealing with that.
All right, let's try.
Add that the new economic development director submitted a document for just visual improvements for streetscape. Just some of those simple steps would make a huge difference. Everybody in the community kind of goes along, follows those ideas to improve what they have for the downtown. It'll also put pressure on those who are less apt to do that, maybe to make some changes on their own accord, fall in line. I hate to raise, this is a real critical issue for our downtown.
It is.
And I hate to raise it, you know, in public, but
Let's try to wrap this up here. It's getting,
I've got nothing else, so there you go.
our
No more
next steps
blathering from me.
is you guys to make the adjustments based on the feedback, and for us to continue to review the draft plans for the next meeting. Our next meeting looks like August 19th. That meeting, we should be reviewing what we talked about tonight. I missed.
I have one quick thing. The question was raised about the water supply the last time we met. And our standpipe, the capacity is actually 750,000 gallons. The elevated water tower is 150, so we have 900,000 gallons of storage. So that does equate to 2 days worth of usage.
Is that the standard across the,
That puts us in still a little bit lower than some of the others, but it is, you know, considerably above the 1.35 days that. So apparently there had been some issues with the with both both vessels, that they were not being filled to their capacity. Something about the altitude valves or something wasn't letting enough water flow into them. So since we've rehabilitated both of those in the last couple of years, they're now able to use the full capacity.
And we've got that another water tower that's coming on, the
The capital improvement thing here.
in the capital improvement.
But being in a small town atmosphere, we'll, if something happens, we'll preserve what we can.
But we spent a lot of money preserving the standpipes. That better last us a while.
Okay, does anyone have anything else for tonight? Emily, Craig, you guys okay?
Yep.
Yep, it's good to be back again. Thank you.
Okay, then let's have an adjournment.
Aaron?
Favor? Carried.
Sure, you betcha.
Thank you.
Thank
Chris?
you.
Thank you. Chris?